Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, hello everyone. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Experts. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have over 35 years of experience at NIH as an applicant, an intramural researcher, a staff writer, and now as a full-time NIH grant mentor. I've helped clients land over $500 million in federal funding, and I'm here to answer your NIH grant writing questions. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So if you are attending live, and we've got a nice robust group attending live today, just a reminder that you're in listen-only mode. This is a Q&A session today, so we won't have a mini tutorial, so feel free to start loading your questions in the Q&A box, and I see that people are doing that. If you're watching this as a recording, just a disclaimer that today is January 22nd, 2025, and everything that we're saying today is true to the best of my knowledge as of today, but you should always check with your program officer. None of the things we discussed today, none of this advice is meant to replace the advising from a program officer at NIH. So in terms of what you should be viewing in the library right now, we're on the heels of the NIH grant deadline, so I'm hoping that you're not watching anything in the library at the moment and you're just putting the finishing touches on your application package and getting ready to upload your February deadline submission, or maybe you're still doing a little bit of writing on your resubmission, which would have a March deadline. Early birds for the June deadlines may be getting started, in which case you should be watching the Master of the R Series Chapter 1 preparation and, preparing for all of that. A couple of FYIs about course updates. We just finished a course update to checklist to avoid top mistakes. I'll be recording that on Fridays, so that should be appearing on your dashboard probably by mid-February. We're also in the process, my team is in the process of updating the content on best practices to increase funding and grow a healthy funding portfolio. I would imagine I'll be recording those hopefully by mid to late February, and those should appear in March. And of course, I'll be next week, I'll be updating Master the R Series yet again, because I update it every time I do a boot camp, and we're getting ready to do another boot camp. And I'll probably record that update mid to late February as well, maybe early March. So a lot of course updates coming your way in the upcoming month or two. Those who have not registered, feel free to register for the live stream boot camp. So session 1 will be February 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern. They go for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on the number of questions. And we run for 4 consecutive weeks. Each week we cover a chapter of Master the R Series. I present it live, take questions. And for this particular one, the 5th Thursday, I'll be doing master resubmissions as well. So I believe that's on March 6th. Let me just double check that. But if you have access to master resubmissions, you can attend that boot camp live. Yeah, it's March 6th. So you should have registration information. But if you don't, Riley, if you could put registration information in the chat for the group about how to register for boot camp, that would be great. Updates at NIH. What to say? Let's see. So the latest news, which is hot off the presses as of midnight last night, actually, is that the Trump administration has directed federal health agencies to pause communications. No further word on that. So it's unclear what exactly that means, that nobody knows why or for how long that mandate has been put in place. And it's completely unclear what it covers. So I don't know if you reach out and ask a question of a program officer, I don't know if they're allowed to respond to you right now. So I'm actually gonna, this was a CNN article that somebody on my team brought to my attention. I'm gonna drop that link in the chat for you. Riley has already put the boot camp registration in there. Let me just change to everybody. Okay, so Riley put the boot camp registration in the chat. I just put the link to the CNN article in the chat that states that health agencies need to pause all communication, so no reports, no nothing. I don't know if this means that they cannot release the table of contents on Friday. Can they release new NOFOs? Can they answer questions for February applicants? I just don't know. So, yeah, so that's where we are with that. I don't know what to say about that, but okay, it looks like we have some questions in the Q&A, and feel free to keep loading them up. I'm actually going to start with a question that I got emailed to me yesterday, and it's a question I get periodically, and I know that I've covered this within the past couple of months at Ask the Grant Writing Expert, but it was a question about how to write the Plan for Enhancing Diverse Perspectives, the PEDP. So, and I'm going to actually share my screen. This person was asking for advice on how to write that section. And NIH has this webpage that gives some information. So there are tips. They talk about the purpose. They actually give examples of PEDP strategies, and how reviewers will evaluate the PEDP. And I'll drop this URL in the chat as well. So let me just do that quickly. I'll do that when I stop the share, when that comes back up for me. Oh, wait, here it is, chat. Okay. And that's to everybody. Okay. So that's in the chat as well. So one thing that I will say is that this particular person had said that she found some information online from two different universities, and I'm I'm always a little skeptical of, let me just say, there are many universities who give great advice, and some of their the advice that they give is open source, and you can just navigate to it through an internet search, and you just stumble upon it and you open it, and wow, that's great advice. But I always look at that information with a little bit of caution, with a little grain of skepticism, because it is an NIH. It's somebody's guess of what, and I mean, anything I tell you is just my guess, right? About what might be a good idea or not. So, whenever possible, go to an NIH website like this one that actually is coming directly from the horse's mouth. What I will say about the PEDP is that I have the only time I ever see this come up in summary statements, and I probably read, I don't know, at least 50 summary statements a year, probably more. It's probably more like 80 or something like that across study sections and institutes, etc. Um, the only time I can remember the PEDP coming up at all is if the person left it out entirely, or they really just kind of mailed it in, where they had like 2 or 3 sentences and that was it. If you make a concerted effort to say something reasonably intelligent about the PEDP, and there are many examples on that webpage, um, they seem to be okay with it. So I'm sure there are going to be people on this call who will say, oh, my experience has been different. And I'm always interested to hear about other people's experiences. So if anybody has thoughts about or tips for writing the PEDP, or, has had an experience where reviewers have commented specifically on the PEDP, saying it was good or bad or missing or whatever, let me know. I'd really love to hear. Feel free to put that in the Q&A box as well. I'm always interested to crowdsource information about this. But again, always take the advice with a grain of salt if it's not coming directly from NIH. Even when it comes from me, I'm just like the rest of you, just out here trying to guess what will work. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions here. So let's get going on these questions that people have typed in. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say is for those of you who are applying, make absolutely certain that you're using Forms I. It's a new form set now. So make sure you're not populating the wrong form set. We're not in Forms H anymore, it's Forms I. On the PHS assignment request form, do we need to list 3 potential ICs? If we really only have one in mind, is there any problem with just listing one? Great question. And no, there's no problem whatsoever with just listing one. Many people do that. Like, for example, if you're doing a cancer project, cancer NCI takes all of the cancer projects. There's very little gray area. You know, often in other areas, there might be some question about whether it goes to this institute or that institute. Does it go to aging or does it go to, NHLBI? Like, there, sometimes there's some gray area. There's no gray area in cancer. If it's even remotely related to cancer, it's going to NCI. So that would be an example where people would just list one institute, but you absolutely can list just one. That's a great question. Okay. I'm looking for tips on how to structure the cover page to try to steer the grant to a particular study section. Could you please advise? Should I go to recorded sessions or somewhere else? Um, well, my big advice is that you don't want to make the request for the study section in the cover letter. That's the big take home message there, because the Center for Scientific Review doesn't look for those for those requests in the cover letter anymore, as of several years ago. So there are instances where you would use a cover letter, but that is not one of the reasons that you use a cover letter. So what you want to do is use the assignment request form, which is a 2-page form. Again, make sure you're using the one from the Forms I form set, and that's where you're going to make your request for a study section. CSR will not look for study section requests in the cover letter. Just hear that. That's not where they're going to look. They're not going to look there at all. There are many reasons why you would use a cover letter, and those are listed, I think, exhaustively at the end of Master the R Series Chapter 1 preparation. I list the reasons. I think the lesson is called assignment request form versus cover letter or something like that. But there are several slides where I talk about what to put in the assignment request form, including the request for the study section and what you would put in a cover letter. Not everybody needs a cover letter, but there are things that one might put in a cover letter. Okay. Hello. Do you think you can speak to the changes in the NIH forms and biosketches and what we should look for in terms of preparing our grants amidst the changes at NIH? Okay, so this is kind of a multi-part question. So I can't speak to the changes in the biosketch format because NIH has been a little slow in getting details out about that, but they are going to, for the starting for deadlines at the end of May and beyond, they're not going to use the same biosketch format. They're going to standardize them with other agencies. So they're going to use the SciNCV format. It's gonna use that. We do have, I think it's coming up, I want to say in late March, we are going to do a session on that, a mini tutorial on that. For now, it's okay to use the same biosketch format, the 5-page traditional NIH biosketch format for the February-March deadlines. But for deadlines May 25th and beyond, you're going to have to use that other format, and we are going to do a session on that. In terms of the other changes like the scoring criteria, we've talked a lot about that in other sessions, but the long and the short of it is NIH has been really clear that the change to scoring criteria in the R series that is being implemented now for applications with deadlines after January 25th is not meant to change the writing of the application. It's meant to change the way it's scored, and it only applies to the R series. It's not the Ks. Having said that, I have been experimenting with some slight changes on some applications, and I talked about that at length in earlier AGE sessions, like the potential for the pros and cons of combining significance and innovation into a single subheader and why one might do that. So you can take a look at some of the old sessions. Also, I have blog posts on it, and I've talked about it in previous boot camps, which there are recordings of on the dashboard, and even in last spring's recording of Master the R Series virtual course, I talked about it there as well. But basically, again, this is all just a guess, right? Like I'm just guessing, like all of you. Like maybe my guesses are based on a little of more data points because I do this all day, every day. But it's all just a guess, at least until we get the first round of summary statements on which the reviewer scored using the new criteria. So I'll have a lot more to say about it this summer. Um, Okay, let's see. The program officer I was working with for a grant submitted last June said that the score was on the edge and asked me to submit a one-page document summarizing how to address the reviewer's comments. The advisory council is scheduled to happen soon. After the date of so there are three parts to this. So Riley, don't clear this question because I'm not going to remember them all. So the first part is after the date of the advisory council, is it appropriate to reach out to the PO to ask if there might be any update from this meeting, or is it best to just wait until they contact you? So if they asked you for, if you have a borderline score, the PO is going to be arguing persuasively for funding for your project at the council meeting. That's where the decision will be made. And there's sometimes they ask you for information. There's no template for that, but I have a template that I use for that, which is to say, I typically list the information about the application, like the mechanism, your name, the organization, the title. Then I bullet point some strengths, some key strengths, especially the ones that align with the stated mission of the some of the stated goals of that institute on their most recent appropriations report. And then I list some of the key critiques and how you would address those. And I try to keep it to a one-page document because the PO is going to be glancing down and speaking. They're not going to be like reading it. They're going to be using it to prompt talking points at council. And I think it is appropriate to reach out after council. However, NIH is on a continuing resolution until March 14th. And what that means is it's a temporary funding bill. The federal year, the fiscal year began on October 1, and there's no budget. And I think everybody at NIH is a little jittery about the potential for really significant budget cuts. So if you're on the edge, my guess is they're going to hold until they have a firm budget number, and it's unclear when that will be. So you may be people who are on the edge in terms of the score, they're like right on the funding line. You may be waiting a while. I mean, if I were a program officer at NIH, I wouldn't. Typically, what you do is you operate on 80% of the previous year's budget to hedge your bet. I'd be operating on like 60% of the previous, if it were me, the 60% of the previous year's budget, because this is such a wild card year in terms of the budget. And I think everybody's a little jittery and uncertain about what's going to happen. So you may be in for a bit of a wait, but it's okay to reach out to the program officer. And if they're allowed to respond to you, they will. Two, are just-in-time requests sent after the scientific advisory board meeting? I think they're actually sent before. I think they're sent for anybody who's within spitting distance of the funding line. They just send it out just to kind of start to gather information. But it is by no means an indication that you are going to be funded. So don't take that. It's encouraging, but it's not definitive by any stretch of the imagination. How soon after a scientific advisory board meeting should someone expect to know whether or not the proposal might be funded? Well, we just talked about that, and it's every year, it's almost every year, it's true that if your advisory council meeting occurs like in November, December, January, February, you're in for a delay because there's almost never a budget on October 1. There's almost always a delay in a continuing resolution. However, this year, I think the delay is going to be longer, and the concern about draconian budget cuts much more significant. So I'm thinking that you may be in for a longer wait. And in fact, sometimes what happens is that, you may not hear and not hear and not hear and not hear. And all of a sudden in August or September at the end of the fiscal year, they let you know that they're picking it up for funding because they had money left over. So it can be a little capricious, like when you find out about your project. And check with your program officer, but if you start writing a resubmission, often you can have an MAA code, multiple active application code, in ERA Commons, which basically means that if you score worse on the A1 than on the A0, they can still consider the A0 for funding with like end of fiscal year money. That's a lot of information. I hope that I hope that made sense and wasn't too confusing. But the long and the short of it is you're in for a wait, particularly this year. There could be quite a wait. And it's okay to ask your program officer for advice about what to do if you're considering an A1. Do you know by any chance if I have a co-PI in my team who is a reviewer in a study section, therefore he can submit grants on March 5th instead of February 5th? Would I be able to take advantage of that if I am the PI and submit March 5th? So there is no such thing as a co-PI. There's a multi-PI at NIH and a co-investigator. So if the person is a multi-PI, you can take advantage of the continuous submission rule. If they're a co-investigator, I don't believe you can. But I would ask the SRO or have that person who is serving on the study section ask what the exact rule is. Ask the SRO what the exact rule is. Oh, and this same person is saying, is it just me? I was not able to connect to the PEDP link you sent us. It says access denied. I know that some people the person who sent me the link said you may have to try to access it from a private browser because it's a CNN article and not everybody has access to that. But my guess is that by now, I got this very early this morning, which was like 6 hours after this gag order was issued. But I would imagine that it's 3:30 now. I would imagine many news outlets have been covering this. So if you just Google federal health agencies pause communications and put in January 2025, my guess is that there'll be a whole slew of articles that are easier to access than this particular CNN link. So yeah, I just copied and pasted that link. So it should, if you can access a CNN article, you should have been able to, but I would just search it at this point. There's nothing magical about the CNN article. They just reported it early, but by now everybody's going to be reporting it and freaking out over it. So let me know if you can't find something and I will send some, I'll do the search and send it, but my guess is you'll be able to find something. Okay. Oh, and I still have, okay, let's see. When revising and resubmitting the proposal, should we focus only on the comments that were included in the first overall summary paragraph or your summary statement, or is it necessary to address every comment from the 3 individual reviewers? That's a really good question. So I usually suggest that applicants who are writing an A1 make an exhaustive list of every comment made by every person and then group them by theme and then respond to the theme. So like reviewers may have problems with, you know, let's say there were 6 comments that pertained to the way you conducted your data analyses. You don't have to exhaustively respond to 6 different comments. You can collapse them into problems with data analyses and then you only have a page for the introduction to the revised application, and most of that space should be devoted to the fix, not to restating the problems in depth. So I usually have the person exhaustively list out the critiques made by everybody everywhere throughout the summary statement, group them by theme, try to write a summary statement that collectively captures the problem, like, you know, problems with rigor, problems with data analysis, something like that, and then respond to it with a paragraph so that you're really kind of confining the amount of that precious 1 page that is devoted to restating the problem. Do your level best to respond to everything. Sometimes you run out of space. So it's important to order them so that the most egregious problems are being addressed at the top and you're working. Like an egregious problem was your project is not hypothesis driven or there are not enough preliminary data or there's no rationale to support it. Less egregious, at the very bottom of the list would be increase the font size on the tables and figures. And if you run out of space, you don't have to say that, just do it, you know? So, yeah, but do your level best to respond to every critique. And I talk about this at length in the Master Resubmissions course if you have access to that. Okay, maybe you just covered this. Could you talk about what is needed when responding to a NOSI RE, the review process? I think I recall that we should include a cover letter, include a request of the expertise we would like to be included on the review panel. No. So again, anything pertaining to a standing study section, CSR is not looking at cover letters, guys. Stop putting things like that in the cover letters. It doesn't belong there. If you want to talk about the type of expertise you are looking for on the panel, it goes in the assignment request form. So that's one part of your question. The other part is the NOSI part, which is a notice of special interest. So you would be responding to a NOFO, a notice of funding opportunity that is under the umbrella of a specific NOSI. In that instance, read what the NOSI says in terms of like review and making sure that you're aligning your project both to the NOFO and the NOSI. And I personally always list both, unless you're applying to like a parent mechanism, I always list the NOSI and the NOFO very briefly in the AIMS page. So we are submitting this application in response to no phone number and then the NOSI number if you have one. And then I say it again in the significance section. That's what I do. So I hope that's helpful. Thoughts on R01 versus other Rs for new lines of research and investigators. How challenging is it to get an R01 versus other R grants? So if you don't have enough preliminary data to be competitive at the R01 level, you're probably looking at a smaller format R. So that might be an R21, an R03, an R34. These are shorter time periods, smaller budgets. I can't say the funding lines are dramatically better on them. And in fact, sometimes the R21 funding line is worse than it is on the R21. But if you don't have enough data and publications to be competitive at the R01 level, that's what you got to do. You got to go to the appropriate mechanism or find some other funding source to beef up your application to come in with a more competitive R01. And because we're getting short on time and there's more questions, I will say the overwhelming majority of you on this call have access to the full library of courses. I would direct you to optimize your funding mechanism, which is, I think, a 45-minute course that really goes in depth into comparing like the R01 versus R21, R03, R34, R15. It kind of gives you, the pros and cons of each of those and when to choose them. Could you say a few words about the R34 mechanism and what it suits? It seems to be a planning grant. A PO recommended that our team consider an R34 instead of an R21 because it provides 3 years, not 2. R21 is high risk, high reward. PO doesn't see our proposal as that, and R34 provides more money. That's correct. So the R34, there is no parent R34. Institutes sponsor their own. So you have to make sure that your target institute has one, and then you have to make sure that you're proposing something that they will fund under the R34. So like some institutes have quirky rules about like, oh, we don't fund mechanistic clinical trials under this mechanism. Like they have quirky little rules. So just double check that your target institute sponsors an R34 and that the format of your project fits what they will fund under that mechanism. Typically, the R34, there are a variety of ways it can be used, but most typically it's used as a clinical trial planning grant. It is 3 years, and it is typically 450,000 cap and directs, but I've seen it go, I think I saw an NCI one once, they have multiple of them, that went up to like 650 in directs. So the R21 is typically 2 years, 275,000 in directs. So obviously, it's a lot easier to do a clinical trial planning grant under the R34 because you have more time, more money. The idea when the R34 is used that way is that it's meant to help you gather all the information you need to inform the design of the full-scale trial at the R01 level. So each of your aims should have as a deliverable that at the end of this aim, we will have all the information we need to inform the design of our recruitment and retention scheme at the for the full scale trial at the R01 level. So that's your deliverable on each aim. What is that aim going to deliver? What is the take home message, the deliverable that will then be used to inform the design of the trial at the full scale trial at the R01 level? And I think in the upcoming months, I'm going to do a whole mini tutorial on um, the various mechanisms that one could use to help prepare, lay the groundwork for a clinical trial proposed at the R01 level. So it would be the R21 or R61/R33, which is the second phase typically that's used for one of those two versus the R34. The R34 is the one that's more typically used, and if that's what your PO suggested, I would look at that. Okay, and I think the CNN article is okay, but there's some other link that is not working. So it's probably the plan to enhance diverse perspectives that's not working. I'm not sure, but I think that was the only other link I shared, so I'm just going to try sharing it again. I think that's the one that was not working. Yep, that's the one. Okay, so the diverse perspectives one I just put in there again, but it looks like it's identical to the link that I already put. I don't know why that's not working. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's not working for you because that is I just copied and pasted it from the website. So hopefully that will work for you. Is anybody else having trouble with that link, the PEDP link? Anyway, you could just do a search NIH PEDP plan for enhancing diverse perspectives. Yeah, so two people can't open it. That is really curious. I wonder what the issue is with that. Let me reload it and see. Yeah, the same link. Oh no, now I'm getting access tonight too, but report a broken link. That is really, all I did was reload it. Okay, so here's what I suggest, and then I'll let you go. This is literally all I did was, hold on a second. I just did a search on NIH PEDP plan and clicked on the first one. But you can see that there are others who have put things out. It's just that some of these are specific to institutes. Like the Brain Initiative, this is going to be specific. Oh, somebody just said newly broken link for being DEI related. That could be because all of those jobs are on the chopping block. So let me see if I can open any of these. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Here it is live, people. Yeah, that's exactly what it is because every single PEDP. Oh, one is still working. I'm going to drop that in the chat. Holy cow. Okay, this is like Orwellian. All right, here is one that is working, but for how long I couldn't say, and it's probably cached in my computer. That may be why it's working. But anyway, do NIH PEDP plan and see if any of the links. Oh, and there are some from universities, like Harvard has some information for whatever that's worth. Again, just take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, that is probably exactly what is happening there because it was literally working an hour ago. Yikes. Okay. So that's it. We're way over time. My apologies. Next time, I think we're talking about cooperative agreements next time. What are they and should you consider one? Which is a question that I get a lot. I'm just going to speak off the cuff about cooperative agreements and the different types and what you should know about them. So if that's of any interest to you, come on down. And if you just have questions, that's fine too. And otherwise, I hope some of you will register for boot camp. And I wish you the very best of luck. And I will see you next time. Courage. Bye.